This is the Alien Annihilators, Book 2, The Mages of Magic, Chapter 11, The Burning Bushes. Cleo and her friends had kept an eye on things from a distance. When the two men had picked up Rachel's water carton, Cleo had held her breath, hoping Rachel's position hadn't been uncovered. After some sort of quarrel between the two men, the stronger-looking one had found something interesting on the ground, then started running to Rachel's position. They were following her footprints, Cleo realized, and began to panic. Brandon knew he had to draw their attention away from the bush. His mind raced as he thought of what would create a sufficient distraction. Cleo didn't need to think, though. She acted instinctively. She unzipped her backpack, grabbed her gauntlet of light out, and sent a laser beam towards the large rock. The explosion made the two men turn around. When they saw all the rocky debris that went sailing across their camp, they started sprinting back, confused at what had just happened back there, and worried for their fellow men. Rachel used that moment to continue her sprint up the hill. Eventually, she was hidden from sight under the crest of a sand dune. Cleo breathed a sigh of relief. Brandon looked relieved as well. But Kenneth, I can't believe she just ignored us. Those thugs were a second away from finding her and binding her in ropes. Then we'd never have made it before nightfall, because we'd have been stuck rescuing her, Kenneth said in frustration. We're lucky Cleo reacted as fast as she had. By the time the bandits continue following Rachel's footprints, she'll be long gone, Brandon said. But it means we might lose track of her if we go the long way. Do we really want to risk that? Cleo asked. Cleo's right. We can't leave Rachel on her own any more than necessary. We have to make it through this camp, Kenneth said. Well, it's risky, but it might be our best chance of sticking together with Rachel. We just have to think of a way through, Brandon said. That's obvious, the bushes. Rachel took out the snake at the last bush. Now it's pretty much a clear path, Kenneth began excitedly, then peeked over the sand dune to take a look at the bushes, and saw the two men dousing the bushes in gasoline and setting them on fire. Larry was following Daryl as he went from bush to bush. He would first douse it in gasoline, then light a match and throw it in the bush. Sir, what are you doing? I thought we needed to make sure the others, Larry began. They're fine, you dolt. None of the rocks came near the tent, Daryl said, as he proceeded to pour gas in the next bush. Okay, fair enough. But what on earth are you doing? The bushes ain't done nothing wrong, Larry began. They've done everything wrong, Larry. They allowed that girl to escape from right under our noses. Well, next time someone wants to go through our camp, they'll have to paint themselves yellow and crawl through the sand. Daryl laughed at his own joke. Larry just tilted his head. Wouldn't it be easier to just wear something yellow? He asked. Throwing a match in the bush, Daryl raised his eyes to the heavens. What I mean to say is, there's no way anyone's getting through this time. We're gonna keep watch, all of us, right after I finish burning all these bushes, he said, then squinted his eyes at the sand dune to the south. Fall down, he's looking our way, Kenneth said, and they all crawled a few inches down the slope of the sand dune. Guys, you're not gonna want to hear this, but the two thugs down there are lighting all the bushes on fire. When they're done burning, there won't even be enough branches left to hide a needle in, Kenneth said, smiling at his own wit. This is no time for joking around, Kenneth. How in the heavens are we getting through now? Cleo asked. Brandon had scooted up to take a look at the valley, and Cleo and Kenneth crawled up to him. He had his binoculars on and lowered them. The men, if they keep burning the bushes at this pace, they'll eventually reach the bush closest to our position. I think this can work to our advantage, Brandon said, his mind forming a plan. Chapter 12: The Gas Can Explosion. An hour passed, but the men were finally approaching the bush nearest to them. Okay, guys, be ready. On the count of 3, we'll proceed to do everything we just revised earlier. In 3, 2, 1, go, Brandon said. Cleo summoned a slingshot using her gauntlet, and just as Daryl was about to start pouring gasoline in it, she summoned a small electric ball into the pouch, pulled the rubber strings back, and shot. The ball made contact with Daryl's hand and shocked it. The painful sensation caused Daryl to drop the gas can into the bush. Brandon then used his magical might to light the gas can on fire. Daryl knew this must have been part of some ambush. Running, he dove behind a large rock on the ground just before the gas can exploded, but luckily Daryl was safe behind this large mass of rock. Did Larry make it? He wondered. Dismissing the thought, he began to grab his magnum out of the holster. It was in at his waistband. But someone hopped over the rock, a boy. He quickly put Daryl in a chokehold. If he could just grab the magnum. But Kenneth was one step ahead. Letting go of Daryl, he pulled the pistol free of its holster and leapt away. Daryl came at him, fists raised, until he loaded the gun and pointed it at him. That's far enough. Put your hands up now, Kenneth said fiercely, and Daryl began to slow down, then stop. He did as he was told. You could have killed us. Larry, is he okay? Daryl asked. The explosion disoriented him a bit, but he's fine, and you'll be fine too if you do as we say, Kenneth said. Now turn around and put your hands behind your back. Daryl knew he didn't have a choice. He did as he was told and felt thick ropes loop around his wrists as Kenneth handcuffed him with a tight knot. Okay, now come on, time for you to meet my friends and reunite with your dumb goon, Kenneth said, forcing him out from behind the rock. Cleo and Brandon were at the base of the sand dune they had been on for a while. Larry was on his knees, arms tied behind his back. Kenneth walked down the hill, Daryl in front of him. Kenneth still had the gun on him, and Daryl's wrists were still tied together. When Kenneth got close to the others, he could see their eyes on Daryl. Cleo looked afraid. Don't worry. These guys aren't in any position to pull anything on us. They're at our mercy now, Kenneth said. Kenneth shoved Daryl down so he was kneeling next to his friend, then went to stand with Cleo and Brandon. He was facing the men, though. Okay, what we need is really simple. We need to make it through that valley your friends are camped in. But if all of them are armed and keeping watch, we'd never be able to pass without a fight, Kenneth said. So Daryl here needs to find a way to distract his comrades long enough for us to make it through. Any ideas? Kenneth asked the man. Yeah, you could go kill yourself, Daryl snarled. Kenneth started towards him, raising the magnum to slam it into his temple. Stop, Cleo yelled, and Kenneth stopped mid-swing. Stepping away from the man, he faced Cleo. He isn't cooperating. He needs to be taught a lesson, Kenneth argued. Cleo just looked back at him, her features in stubborn lines. Sighing in resignation, Kenneth turned to Larry and raised the gun to his head. How about you? Are we gonna hear anything clever out of your mouth as well? Kenneth asked, and Larry shook his head. Good. So my first question is, how many other people are in that camp? Kenneth asked. Other than me and Daryl, it's just 2 other people. We keep watch of the valley in pairs, see? Making sure we see any travelers in advance of them getting close. Once we spot someone, we alert the others and get to our hiding positions on top of the rock. We crouch down really low on it so they don't see us, and when they get close, boom, we jump down, clubs ready, and beat the crap out of them basically, then steal their supplies, Larry said. Ever thought of asking them to give you their supplies? If you threaten their lives, that might be enough for them to give it up. Not that I approve of stealing, of course, Kenneth said. The boss says it's the surest way to get their supplies quickly without having to risk them putting up a fight, Larry said. So if I showed myself over this hill and they saw me, they would get into position and watch their prey closely as they slowly approached their position, and only when they come close do your friends come down to bash the unsuspecting victim, correct? Kenneth asked, and Larry nodded. Huh. This could actually work to our advantage, Kenneth said, his mind forming a plan. Chapter 13, The Lone Traveler. Jago and Darius walked out of the tent, wondering why Daryl hadn't called them out yet. They were 10 minutes late for their shift, and Daryl would have never allowed that to happen. Jago searched the landscape around him and found nothing. He wondered where Daryl and Larry had gone to. We need to do a sweep of the surrounding area. Daryl and Larry have to be somewhere nearby, Jago said. Wait, Jago, look. It's a traveler to the west. We have to get to our positions. Don't worry about them for now. They'll be fine, Darius insisted, and went to the base of the large rock and started climbing. Reluctantly, Jago went to climb up as well. Once they were laying prone on the rock, they set their eyes on the figure in the distance. It was a boy, probably around 18 years old. He was walking towards the rock at a steady pace. Look, he's coming right towards us. He probably wants to rest his weary bones under the shade of our rock. We're gonna have it easy this time, Jago. I can feel it, Darius said excitedly. Jago wanted to be excited as well. After all, travelers had been scarce for the last month or so, and just the other day they had run out of water. But Jago felt like something unusual was at play here. Usually travelers made a wide berth around the rock. Jago and the crew would have to hop down from the rock when they were close enough and chase them down with their clubs. This traveler made no such precautions. He just strolled to the base of the rock, took off his backpack, and casually laid back. It was as if he had no idea of the bandit threat in Heat Stroke Desert, a desert notorious for its merciless thugs and thieves. Maybe he is just a clueless traveler, Jago thought, but he doubted it. The kid, he's directly below us. Come on, let's get him, Darius hissed, rising to his feet and raising his club. Darius was just about to jump down when something flew at his head from behind him, a rock. It made contact with his skull. Losing balance on the uneven surface of the rock they were on, Darius fell forwards and over the side. Jago looked behind him to see who was there. Just a girl and a middle-aged man. The girl was armed with a slingshot, which explained the rock that had hit Darius in the head. But before his eyes, the sling transformed into a bow and arrow, and the girl pulled the string back. What the heck did I just see? Jago thought. Don't move, unless you want an arrow between your eyes, Cleo threatened. She felt bad about threatening him, but she needed to make sure he didn't try anything stupid. When Jago froze, she then said, Now put down your weapon. Jago looked at the club in his hands. It wouldn't do him much good from this distance, So Jago threw it to the ground. That was a nasty thing you did back there, hitting Darius in the back of the head like that, Jago said. It's also a nasty thing to hit travelers in the head with clubs and steal their stuff, Cleo pointed out, then said, his head'll be just fine. Now what's gonna happen is we'll climb down this rock, and then you'll come down after us. Then we tie you and your friend up, and we head into the heat-stroked desert village to the north of here together. We need to put you all into their custody. I'm sure you understand. Chapter 14, The Water Problem. Now that all the bandits were tied up and at their mercy, they could finally continue their journey to the heat-stroked desert village. They'd agreed to have the criminals walk quite a distance ahead of them. Brandon was with them and would keep an eye on them. Cleo just wished that Rachel would have waited for them. When she reached the peak of the sand dune north of the valley, the woman was nowhere to be seen. "Boo!" Rachel exclaimed, jumping out from behind a rock. Cleo flinched in surprise, then smiled. "You're okay. Thank goodness. I hope you did fine on your own without any water to help beat this heat." "Oh yeah, that reminds me. Give me some of your water. Please, I'm dying of thirst," Rachel said. So Cleo grabbed out an empty bottle in her bag, poured half of her water into it, then gave it to Rachel. They both had less than a quarter of a gallon now. Uh-oh, Cleo thought. She thought about asking Kenneth if they could have some of his water. She knew Kenneth would give her some, but she wasn't sure about Rachel. It wasn't her fault the snake had made her throw her water in the air in surprise, was it? On cue, Kenneth stepped forwards over the peak of the dune and saw Rachel. He saw the water in her hand, scowled at her, then looked at Cleo. "What do you think you're doing, Cleo?" he asked rudely. "It's 1 o'clock now. Rachel's been in the sun for about 4 hours by now, without any water," Cleo began. "You gave her water, and what did she do with it?" "She chucked it in the air at the first sign of danger. We told her snakes would be in those bushes, but she didn't listen. Maybe a couple hours in the sun will teach her a lesson," Kenneth argued. Cleo opened her mouth to argue, then shut it. Arguing her case might not be very effective. Kenneth was convinced she didn't deserve it. Cleo sighed. "You're still gonna share with me, right? My water's running a bit low by now," she said, swirling the carton around to emphasize her point. Kenneth narrowed his eyes. "If I give you half of my water, you're not just gonna give half of that to Rachel, are you?" he asked. I can't guarantee that," she began. "Then sorry, but I can't give you any of my water until you promise to keep it to yourself," he said, then started marching ahead. "Your boyfriend is such a jerk," Rachel said to Cleo. Cleo just looked ahead. "He's not a jerk. He just has some trust issues he needs to work on. But don't worry, what we have should get us to the village safely. I hope," she thought to herself. Chapter 15. 3 Against 1. The four thugs walked in a 2-by-2 fashion. 2 walked in front and 2 in back, with Brandon taking the rear, choosing to keep away from them a ways back. Daryl was next to Larry. He was thinking of a way to escape. He'd actually been surprised when the kids had put Brandon in charge of the watch. He'd expected them to give him a weapon. The Magnum would have been a good choice to keep them in line, but the man hadn't been given any such weapon at all. Brandon didn't look particularly tough, being a man well into his 40s. If they all reacted at the same time, they could slam him into the ground and stomp his lights out, then take his water. Only with their hands tied, that would be quite difficult. We'll figure that out later, Daryl thought to himself. Boys, we're getting out of here. On the count of three, we turn around, charge this guy, and do whatever we can to hurt him, slamming into him, stomping his face with our boots, whatever. And once he's too injured to stand up, we'll make a run for it. Agreed, he whispered. Everyone grunted their assent except Jago. Daryl turned his gaze to him. Problem, Jago? He asked. Well, sir, these people are a clever bunch. One minute I was thinking to myself I was gonna get me some easy supplies off that kid. The next minute, this old man and that girl show up right behind us. That girl can aim really good with that slingshot. Hit Darius square in the back of the head. While the man stood back and did nothing to assist her, Darius reminded him. But Jago shook his head. I still don't think this is a good idea, he said. Fine, be a wussy. Larry, Darius, on the count of three, we're gonna turn around and bash this guy. Understood? Daryl's asked, and the two nodded their agreement. Okay then, we do this in 3, 2, 1, go. Brandon had seen the men ahead discussing something in hushed tones. Not planning an escape, I hope, he thought to himself. But then three of the men turned around and started charging, and Brandon sighed. I didn't want to have to do this, Brandon thought. Brandon just stood there and watched, letting the men rush to his position. But before they could get close, they slowed down, then stopped. Daryl was confused. Here they were rushing this man, and he barely so much as flinched. But Daryl didn't let his uncertainty show. We're gonna beat you to a pulp, hands literally tied behind our back. You don't think we can do it? He challenged. I think that even if the three of you were untied and had knives, you'd still be unable to defeat me, Brandon said casually, and the three of them actually laughed. Would you care to prove that to us? Are you some kind of martial arts professional? Daryl remarked sarcastically. Then suddenly the ropes went loose and fell to the sandy floor. Knives then appeared in their hands as if by magic. What just happened? Daryl thought. Challenge accepted. And while I am not a karate ninja, you'll find that I am far worse, Brandon challenged, and for a second Daryl felt actual fear of what the man may have up his sleeve. He shook it off and said, You heard the man. Let's get him. Knives raised, the three of them charged towards the unarmed man. Daryl was in the lead, and he got ready to plunge the knife in Brandon's heart. But then, as if by magic, a force took hold of his legs, and he could no longer move them. He fell to the sand face first before Brandon. The fall had made him toss the knife to the side by accident. Seeing what had happened to their leader, Larry and Darius slowed down to a halt. Did Daryl, the great bandit feared by many, just lose a battle because he tripped over his feet? Larry asked himself, but he had no idea what had just happened. Come any closer, and you two will be falling on your face as well, Brandon threatened. They decided that whatever Brandon was, he was definitely greater than a martial arts professional. This is the end of chapter 15, and I hope y'all enjoyed, and goodbye.